Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a viral story that is literally making massive waves online right now. We're going to take a completely objective, structured look at some major claims involving the Department of Justice, a federal grand jury, and the Southern Poverty Law Center, or the SPLC. Look, I know this is a highly charged topic, but our goal here is super straightforward. We are just going to unpack the exact allegations, lay out the financial data being presented, and then look at the legal defense. We want you to understand exactly what this controversy is all about and why it matters to the broader political landscape. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. The source material we're looking at today definitely does not mince words. The creator actually calls this a Hiroshima-level Armageddon doomsday. So right off the bat, they're signaling that this isn't just some minor administrative error, right? They're alleging a total, fundamental collapse of the SPLC's credibility. And the core of this whole viral argument really hinges on that phrase right at the end, hate hoax group. To understand why they're using such explosive language, we really need to look closely at their specific claims.
Here is our roadmap for this explainer. 1. The core allegations. 2. Following the informant money. 3. The SPLC legal defense. And 4. The broader political impact.
Let's start with Section 1, the core allegations.
Now, what's really interesting here is the stark contrast right at the heart of this story. On one hand, you've got the SPLC's very public stated mission, right straight from their website, dismantling white supremacy. But on the other hand, the viral claim alleges that instead of dismantling it, the SPLC is actually funding a hate hoax. And why? Well, the accusation is that they're doing it specifically to scare their donors into giving them more money. Essentially, the claim is that they are actively deceiving their donor base about how funds are being used.
Which brings us to this really fascinating concept put forward by the original source, the hate merchandising industry. They basically argue that America has a fundamental supply and demand problem when it comes to hatred. The whole premise is that there actually isn't enough organic, naturally occurring extremism in the country to keep these massive civil rights NGOs funded. So to keep that money spigot flowing, the argument goes that organizations like the SPLC have to artificially create or subsidize the supply of hate, just to meet the demand of their donors who think they're funding a massive fight against widespread extremism.
But according to the breakdown we're analyzing, this isn't just some philosophical critique anymore. It has crossed straight into the legal realm. The source cites what they call a bombshell superseding indictment, which is basically just a formal, updated list of criminal charges from a federal grand jury. The Department of Justice is reportedly charging the SPLC with wire fraud, making false statements, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. These claims assert that the charges stem directly from how the SPLC handled its money, specifically regarding its informants within extremist groups, supposedly keeping their donors completely in the dark.
Let's move to Section 2 and see how this builds. Following the informant money.
$4 million. The original creator really anchors their outrage on this specific figure. They claim the Department of Justice found that the SPLC used $4 million of donor money to fund the KKK and other extremist groups. I mean, that is a massive sum of money. And the underlying argument here is that this wasn't just passive observation of these groups. The claim is that it was active financial support.
And here is where the allegations get incredibly specific and frankly pretty shocking. We aren't just talking about paying for information here. The DOJ allegedly claims that the SPLC actually paid for the wood and fuel used in cross burnings. They allege SPLC funds bought KKK robes and hoods, and even created racist paraphernalia that these groups then turned around and sold at rallies. But maybe most remarkably, the source notes that the SPLC allegedly paid the everyday living expenses of their informants. Basically, the claim is that this allowed them to be full-time salaried Ku Klux Klan members without even needing an outside job.
According to the breakdown of these DOJ documents, the actual mechanics of this operation were highly structured. Step 1. The SPLC allegedly went so far as to encourage 2 KKK members to stay in the movement, even after they said they wanted to leave. Step 2. They were supposedly offered a $1,200 monthly salary just to act as informants. And then Step 3. To cover up the paper trail, the SPLC allegedly reimbursed these informants for their extreme activities, like that cross-burning fuel we just talked about, by funneling the money entirely through fake accounts.
To really wrap your head around the scale of these claims, let's look at the alleged payouts. The creator fires off these numbers to show just how broad this network allegedly was. We're talking $1 million allegedly flowing to KKK affiliates, $300,000 going to Aryan Nation affiliates, and $90,000 paid out to a member involved in the Unite the Right rally.
Presenting this data is really meant to show that this wasn't just an isolated incident, but an expansive, heavily funded operation reaching across multiple white supremacist networks.
And the source points out what they see as the ultimate, cynical success of this alleged strategy. Following the infamous Charlottesville rally, a rally that the original breakdown claims was actively promoted and logistically supported by one of the SPLC's own paid informants, the SPLC's revenue allegedly almost tripled. For the creator, this is absolutely the smoking gun of their whole hate merchandising theory. Create the terrifying event and then reap massive financial rewards from a frightened donor base.
So, that brings us to Section 3, the SPLC legal defense.
So the crucial point is hearing the other side, and the main counterpoint comes directly from Abby Lowell, the high-profile attorney representing the SPLC. His defense is a flat-out, categorical denial of the core motive alleged by the initial claims. He states firmly that the SPLC did not lie to its donors and they didn't mislead banks. But the most important part of his defense is this. He argues that the SPLC's informant program, rather than manufacturing hate, actively prevented violence and saved lives. The defense's stance is that paying informants inside these dangerous organizations is just standard, absolutely necessary practice to gather intelligence and stop tragedies before they even happen.
Furthermore, the defense has raised a major procedural flag here. Lowe and the legal team take serious issue with how this information became public in the first place. They argue that a draft was improperly leaked before being officially unsealed by a court. They contend this violates strict federal grand jury secrecy rules that exist specifically to protect reputations before formal charges are finalized. They're suggesting this leak was basically a calculated smear campaign designed to damage the SPLC's reputation in the court of public opinion well before they could formally defend themselves in an actual court. Let's transition to our final section, Section 4, the broader political impact.
This controversy has rapidly attracted some major high-profile amplification, which I think brilliantly illustrates just how fast stories like this escalate in today's media environment. The original breakdown highlights a quote from Elon Musk, who bluntly stated, "SPLC is a criminal organization." By bringing in voices like Musk, the creator is showing that this is not just some fringe legal dispute. It's being recognized and fiercely validated by some of the most influential figures in the tech and media landscape, framing the SPLC as fundamentally corrupt.
And this leads directly to the overarching conclusion of the original claims. The creator argues that if you were to cut off the money, defunding what they call corrupt NGOs, and turning off the government money spigots flowing to these organizations, you wouldn't just bankrupt a few groups. The argument makes the extraordinarily bold claim that doing so would eliminate 99% of the political violence and hate crimes in the entire country. This thesis relies entirely on the premise we started with, that the vast majority of this hate is artificially manufactured by the very organizations claiming to fight it.
Which leaves us with this final critical question to consider based on everything we've looked at today. Where exactly is the line between monitoring extremism and actively subsidizing it? If an organization pays someone inside a hate group to gather intelligence, at what point does that money cross over into actually funding the group's operations and fueling their growth? The original claims assert that the SPLC absolutely sprinted past that line. On the flip side, the SPLC's defense claims their actions were completely vital for public safety. It is a deeply complex legal and moral boundary, and it's exactly what sits at the very heart of this explosive controversy.